Your blood pressure is concerning, Mr. Richardson. And these cholesterol numbers. Dr. Peters looked at me over her reading glasses with the kind of disappointment that reminded me of my mother. I shifted uncomfortably in the too small chair of her office, acutely aware of how my shirt buttons strained slightly. At 36, I'd grown used to being the big guy, the one who made up for his size with sharp wit and an encyclopedic knowledge of contemporary literature. Being a literary agent meant I could hide behind emails and phone calls, behind the manuscripts I read late into the night while stress-eating takeout. I'm recommending some lifestyle changes, she continued, scribbling on her prescription pad. Diet modification, and most importantly, regular exercise. That's how I found myself standing outside Elite Fitness the following Monday morning, clutching a gym bag like it was a life preserver. The building seemed to be made entirely of glass and steel, reflecting the early San Francisco fog and my own reluctant expression, "Welcome to Elite Fitness." The receptionist's enthusiasm was almost offensive at 7 a.m. "You must be Alex. Matt's expecting you." Matt, as it turned out, was waiting in the consultation room. He stood when I entered, and I immediately felt every one of my insecurities magnify. He was tall, with the kind of physique that belonged on fitness magazine covers, broad shoulders tapering to a narrow waist, strong arms visible under his fitted black trainer's shirt. But it was his smile that caught me off guard, warm, genuine, reaching all the way to his blue eyes. "Alex, right?" He extended his hand. "I'm Matt Kennedy. Thanks for coming in early." His handshake was firm, but not aggressive, and his voice had a slight southern lilt that seemed at odds with his surroundings. "Early is relative," I managed, trying not to sound as nervous as I felt. "I usually don't see this hour unless I'm up late reading manuscripts. Literary agent, right? The form mentioned that." He gestured for me to sit. "What kind of books?" I blinked, surprised by his interest. Most people's eyes glazed over when I talked about work. Contemporary fiction, mainly. Some mystery and literary nonfiction. Any authors I might know? Ever read Sarah Mitchell's The Glass Hour? His face lit up. The one about the watchmaker's daughter? Man, that ending wrecked me for days. And just like that, some of my tension eased. We spent the next few minutes talking about books while he reviewed my health information. It felt more like a conversation with a friend than a fitness consultation. "Okay," he said finally, becoming more professional but maintaining that warmth. "Let's talk about your goals. What brought you here?" I considered lying, making up something about wanting to get in shape for summer. Instead, I found myself telling the truth. My doctor basically told me I'm on the fast track to a heart attack if I don't make some changes. And honestly, I'm tired. Tired of being out of breath after one flight of stairs, tired of avoiding photos, tired of... I gestured vaguely at myself. Matt's expression remained non-judgmental. That kind of honesty, that's the hardest part for most people. Everything else is just showing up and doing the work. And I'll be here to help with that part. We set up a schedule, 3 sessions a week to start, early mornings before the gym got crowded. As I stood to leave, he added, "Bring a book recommendation next time. I trust your professional opinion." The next morning, I arrived carrying both my gym bag and a copy of James Chen's latest novel. Matt was waiting, looking unfairly awake and attractive in the early morning light. "First things first," he said, leading me to a treadmill. "We're going to establish your baseline. Nothing crazy, just a warm-up walk." As I walked, he asked me about the book. I found myself explaining the plot between increasingly labored breaths. Somehow, focusing on describing the story's intricate character development made me forget to watch the time ticking by. "Good," he said after 15 minutes. "That's your warm-up done. Ready to learn some basic strength training?" What followed was both less and more intense than I'd feared. Matt was patient, explaining each movement carefully, correcting my form with gentle adjustments. His hands were professional but warm when he showed me how to position my shoulders during a chest press, how to properly hinge at the hips for a dumbbell row. "Remember," he said as we finished, "this isn't about becoming someone else. It's about being the strongest, healthiest version of yourself." I wanted to believe him. But as I watched him demonstrate exercises with perfect form, his shirt riding up to reveal abs that looked carved from marble, it was hard not to make comparisons. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. 3 mornings a week, I'd arrive at the gym carrying a new book recommendation, and Matt would greet me with that warm smile and increasingly challenging workouts. We'd discuss literature between sets, debating character motivations while I struggled through squats, analyzing plot structures during rest periods. "Your form is improving," Matt said one morning, spotting me during bench presses. "You're getting stronger." "Hard to tell under all this," I grunted, nodding to my still substantial midsection. "Hey," he said firmly, helping me rack the weights. "Remember what we talked about. Progress isn't just about what you see in the mirror." But it wasn't just physical progress I was worried about. I was becoming increasingly aware of how my heart rate increased, not just from exercise, but from the way Matt's hands felt guiding my form, how his encouragement made me feel simultaneously seen and exposed. One morning, about 6 weeks into our sessions, I arrived to find Matt looking unusually subdued. "Everything okay?" I asked as we set up for our workout. He hesitated. "You ever have one of those days where your personal life crashes into your professional one? Try being a literary agent during a messy breakup. Nothing like rejecting manuscripts while nursing a broken heart." That got a small smile out of him. "My ex is getting married. To my former best friend. They just announced it on Facebook." "Ouch," I winced. "How long ago was the breakup?" 2 years. David and I were together for 5 years before that. Classic story. Grew apart, wanted different things. He wanted to climb the corporate ladder. I wanted to help people transform their lives through fitness. He adjusted my form on a shoulder press. Found out later he'd been seeing Chris, my best friend since college, for months before we split. "That's rough," I said, trying to ignore how close he was standing. "How are you handling it?" "Throwing myself into work. Speaking of which, let's up your weights today." But after our session, as I was gathering my things, I made a decision. "Hey, want to grab coffee? You've listened to me complain about manuscript deadlines for weeks. Seems fair to return the favor." He looked surprised, then pleased. "I'd like that." The coffee shop around the corner became our post-workout ritual. We'd sit in a quiet corner, Matt with his black coffee, me gradually transitioning from sugary lattes to simpler drinks. We talked about everything. His childhood in Georgia, my coming out to my traditional Chinese parents, his journey from corporate accountant to personal trainer, my love affair with literature. "You know," he said one morning, watching me demonstrate proper manuscript formatting on my laptop, "you're different from my other clients, because I'm the only one who brings you homework." I joked, referring to the growing stack of books I'd loaned him. "Because you see me," he said quietly. "Not just the trainer persona. Most people look at me and see the muscles, the confidence. They don't ask about my favorite books or notice when I'm having a rough day." Our eyes met across the table, and something shifted in the air between us. But before either of us could speak, his phone buzzed with a reminder for his next client. The following weeks brought subtle changes. Matt started suggesting outdoor workouts, hiking trails with spectacular views of the bay, beach runs during sunset. Our coffee talks grew longer, sometimes stretching into lunch. I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking, with an expression I was afraid to interpret. 2 months into our training, I had to attend a publishing conference in New York. A week away from our sessions, from our talks, from him. "Keep up with your workouts," he said during our last session before my trip. "The hotel has a gym. It won't be the same without you correcting my form," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "You could," he hesitated. "You could text me if you want form checks, or just to talk." That week in New York was a strange mix of professional success and personal distraction. During panel discussions about market trends, I found myself composing texts to Matt about the horrible hotel gym equipment. Late at night, we'd exchange messages about the books he was reading, the clients he was training, the way New York made me feel, simultaneously energized and lonely. On my last night in the city, after a particularly successful networking dinner, I sent him a selfie from Times Square. It was the first photo of myself I'd willingly taken in years. Looking good, he texted back. The city suits you. Still miss SF's fog, I replied. And my favorite trainer. There was a long pause before his response came. Just the trainer? My heart raced as I typed. No, not just the trainer. The flight back to San Francisco felt endless. I'd barely slept, my mind replaying our text conversation, analyzing every word. By the time I landed, I had convinced myself I'd misread everything and potentially ruined both a professional relationship and a growing friendship. But Matt was waiting at our usual coffee shop the next morning, earlier than our scheduled training time. He stood when he saw me, and the look in his eyes made my carefully prepared speech disappear. Welcome back, he said softly. Matt, about those texts. I can't be your trainer anymore. My heart sank. I understand. I crossed a line, and no, he interrupted, stepping closer. I can't be your trainer because I want to take you to dinner. Properly. And it would be unethical to date a client. Oh, I felt lightheaded. Oh, unless I misread things? His confidence wavered slightly. You didn't, I managed. Dinner sounds good. Great, actually. His smile could have powered the entire city. Tonight? I know a place in North Beach. Good food, quiet enough to talk. That evening, I spent an embarrassing amount of time getting ready. The changes in my body over the past months meant my clothes fit differently. Better. But I still felt nervous. This wasn't just dinner. This was Matt seeing me outside the gym, without the buffer of our professional relationship. The restaurant was small and intimate, tucked away on a side street. Matt was waiting outside, wearing dark jeans and a blue button-down that made his eyes even more striking. He looked almost as nervous as I felt. You look amazing, he said, and the sincerity in his voice made me believe him. Inside, over plates of handmade pasta and glasses of wine, we navigated the strange new territory of being on an actual date. Without the pretense of training sessions or casual coffee talks, we could finally say things we'd both been holding back. When did you know, I asked, that you wanted more than just trainer-client? He twirled pasta around his fork, considering. Remember that day you brought in Kazuo Ishiguro's The Remains of the Day? You spent 20 minutes explaining the symbolism of dignity and regret while doing deadlifts. I realized I was more interested in your analysis than in correcting your form, which was perfect, by the way. I was trying to impress you, I admitted. It worked. His foot brushed against mine under the table. Your turn. When did you know? That morning you told me about David and Chris. Not because you were vulnerable, though that was part of it, but because even when you were hurting, you still focused on making me feel stronger, better. That's when I realized I was in trouble. After dinner, neither of us wanted the evening to end. We walked through North Beach, past Italian bakeries and cafes, our hands brushing until Matt finally took mine. His palm was warm against mine, calloused from years of handling weights, but gentle in the way he interlaced our fingers. This feels surreal, he said as we stopped to look at the city lights. I've wanted to do this for weeks. Hold my hand? Everything. He turned to face me. Ask you about your day without watching the clock for my next client. Tell you how much I admire not just your progress in the gym, but your passion for books, your kindness, your humor. Kiss you. The last part was barely a whisper, but it made my breath catch. What's stopping you? He answered by closing the distance between us. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, but when I pulled him closer, it deepened into something that made me forget we were standing on a public street. When we finally parted, he rested his forehead against mine. I've never kissed a client before. Good thing I'm not your client anymore. The next few weeks were a delicious blur of discovering each other outside the gym. Matt recommended a new trainer for me, but still worked out beside me sometimes, though these sessions usually ended with us getting distracted by each other. We spent evenings at my apartment, cooking healthy meals that often got cold because we couldn't keep our hands off each other. He introduced me to rock climbing. I introduced him to poetry readings, but it wasn't all perfect. We had our challenges, my occasional insecurity about our different fitness levels, his workaholic tendencies, the complications of transitioning from a professional relationship to a romantic one. Some of his clients were less than thrilled to learn he was dating the before picture. One evening, after a particularly difficult day where I'd overheard some gym gossip about us, I found him waiting at my apartment with takeout, and understanding. Want to talk about it? He asked, pulling me close. They're not entirely wrong, I said into his chest. You look like a fitness model, and I look like the brilliant, sexy man I'm falling in love with, he finished firmly. Alex, look at me. When I did, he continued. You know what I see when I look at you? Someone who's brave enough to change his life, smart enough to challenge my thoughts on everything from exercise theory to modern literature, and kind enough to make me feel seen for more than my appearance. The physical changes you've made are impressive, but they're not why I'm here. You're falling in love with me? I focused on the part that made my heart race. His smile was soft. Have been for months. Is that okay? Instead of answering, I kissed him, trying to pour everything I felt into it. When we came up for air, I whispered, I love you too. As summer turned to fall, our relationship deepened. Matt gradually moved more of his belongings into my apartment, his protein shakers mixing with my literary magazines, his workout gear finding space next to my button-downs. We developed routines, Sunday meal prep that turned into dancing in the kitchen, morning runs that often ended with coffee and conversations about our dreams. One Saturday morning, I woke to find Matt already up, doing push-ups by the window. The early sun caught the angles of his face, and I felt that now familiar surge of both desire and disbelief that this was my life. You're staring, he said without stopping his workout. Can you blame me? He finished his set and crawled back into bed, pulling me close. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. My heart skipped. Should I be worried? No, he laughed, kissing my forehead. I've been thinking about starting my own gym. Something smaller, more personal than elite. Focus on holistic wellness, not just physical fitness. Maybe even have a reading corner for clients between sets. Matt, that's amazing. There's more, he continued. I found a potential space. It needs work, but it's the old bookstore on Valencia Street. The one you said would make a perfect hybrid space. I sat up, excitement building. The Victorian with the bay windows? The same. I've been running numbers, talking to banks about loans. But, he hesitated. I wanted to know if you'd consider being part of it, not just as my boyfriend, but as a partner. Your business sense, your love of literature, we could create something unique. Fitness for the body and mind. Are you asking me to go into business with you? I'm asking you to build something with me. Something that could be ours. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. What if it doesn't work? What if we fail? Then we fail together and try something else. He took my hand. I know it's a risk, mixing business and pleasure, but I believe in us, in what we could create together. Over the next few months, our dream took shape. We signed the lease on the Victorian, spending weekends stripping wallpaper and planning layouts. Matt handled the fitness equipment and training programs, while I curated a collection of wellness books and organized author talks. We named it Mind and Muscle, and slowly built a community that believed in our vision of holistic health. Opening day arrived on a crisp autumn morning. As I watched Matt cut the ribbon, surrounded by friends, family, and our first batch of clients, I felt overwhelmed by how much had changed in a year. I'd walked into a gym, hoping to lower my blood pressure, and found not just health, but love, purpose, and a future I never imagined. Later that night, after the celebrations had ended and we were alone in our space, Matt pulled me into a dance among the weight racks and bookshelves. Happy, he asked, swaying to music only we could hear. More than I ever thought possible, I replied honestly. Though I still can't believe you got my parents to come to the opening. Your mom actually texted me yesterday. She's finally forgiven me for stealing you from your publishing career, only because you let her redesign our logo 3 times. He laughed, then grew serious. You know, when David left, I thought that was it for me. Thought I'd just focus on work, keep my heart safe. Then you walked into Elite Fitness with your battered copy of The Glass Hour and changed everything. Funny how life works out, I mused. I walked in thinking I needed to transform my body, never expecting you'd help transform my whole life instead. Speaking of transformations. He stepped back slightly, reaching into his pocket. I had this whole speech planned, but looking at you now, in our space, surrounded by everything we've built together. He pulled out a small box and dropped to one knee. My heart stopped. Alex Richardson, you walked into my gym as a client and became my best friend, my partner, my love. Will you marry me? Through tears, I managed to say, only if you promise to spot me for the rest of our lives. Always, he promised, slipping the ring onto my finger before pulling me into a kiss. That night, lying in bed with Matt's arm around me, I thought about how far we'd come. From trainer and client, to lovers, to business partners, to fiancés. My body had changed, yes, but more importantly, my heart had grown stronger. My confidence had deepened, and my capacity for love had expanded beyond what I thought possible. Matt stirred beside me. What are you thinking about? How sometimes the best kind of exercise is learning to let your heart do things it's afraid of. He pulled me closer. Like falling in love with your personal trainer? Like believing I deserved that love in return. Outside our window, San Francisco's fog rolled in, wrapping our Victorian in its familiar embrace. Inside, we had created our own world, one where strength wasn't just measured in weights lifted, but in risks taken, where wellness meant nurturing both body and soul, and where love spotted you through every challenging set life threw your way.